Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hello and welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we Radiate Calm with Agi Heale, the author of Generation Panic, a book all about anxiety. The book includes simple and empowering techniques to combat anxiety, as a matter of fact. Hello, Agi. You're in Singapore.
I am. Hi, Christy. Yes, I was just saying it's a miserable, raining, dreary morning. But yeah, thrilled to be speaking to you. So thanks for having me.
Oh, well, I'm so happy that we made this work because the time difference was a bit of a botherment.
But I know. Well, thank you for being so flexible. Putting me in.
To you too, absolutely. So Generation Panic, I think this book is so needed right now. Obvious question, why did you write it? Why now? Why this book?
So I agree. It's the time is of the essence. It seems like it's never been a better time to be talking about anxiety and panic, and yeah, it was almost lucky for me that this is the moment that it's been published. But to rewind slightly, I was working in financial services recruitment, and I got to this point where I had a lot of things on paper. I was like, tick, 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 director, managing teams, earning good money, engaged to be married. And actually behind it all, not that I was willing to show anyone, but I was really struggling. I was incredibly anxious, having panic attacks, which I'd never had before, and ultimately felt completely blindsided. And so at that time, I was just desperate to find anything that would make me feel better, like make me feel myself and like reconnect back to something. And I couldn't find it. I would find like reels of information about one topic or something that like a theorist or an amazing PhD person had written, but didn't have experience of. And I just kept on coming up against the same advice, like do some meditation. And I would sit there and be like, I can't meditate.
Too anxious to meditate.
Exactly. I'm like bouncing off the top of the ceiling. I can't sit here and watch my thoughts go by in a nice, calm way. And so, yeah, Generation Panic was really born out of what I wanted and what I was looking for and I couldn't find.
I kind of joke that this podcast is by Christy for Christy because it's things that I want to explore and that I need. So it sounds like this book is by Agi for Agi in terms of what you were needing at the time. And so where did you turn then to research this book, to find these simple techniques to use?
Well, a number of things happened at that moment. I mean, first of all, I just kind of stubbornly plowed through. And then when I was having a full-blown panic attack, I called my fiance at the time. Please say my now husband. It still went through. And just said, like, what on earth is going on? I have no idea what's happening to me. And the only people that I really spoke to about were him, my immediate family, and particularly my mum. And I remember she sat me down and she was like, I think you're having panic attacks. I think you're dealing with anxiety. 'Cause I didn't even know. I didn't know that those words, that terminology hadn't really been a part of my life. I hadn't realized. And so the first part was really like an education that my mum was helping me with, saying, this is what's happening. This is what is actually physically going on in your body. This is the response that you're then giving back to that. And so that was the first place that I kind of tooled up, was even just having an education. And the first kind of bulk of the book, which has 5 chapters is in the panic. It's, in that moment, understanding what's happening, understanding the fight or flight response, comprehending like the concoction of hormones that start racing about your body and what you can do. So that was the first place I started. And I just started researching and reading and looking up on it. And I'm now, 8 years later, I haven't had a panic attack since that time, but I've also gone on to train as a certified professional coach, and I'm now a master NLP practitioner. So a lot of those things have kind of interwoven into that, into the tools, and kind of, so it's been a real journey. It's been like a whole host of different things.
And so for someone who's not experienced anxiety, who's not experienced a panic attack, walk us through what happens.
So everyone's different, but it's all kind of within the same camp. It's like, right. It's same, but different. And so, exactly. And for me, when I start to feel anxious, what I feel is everything just kind of constricts, like my shoulders will go up, everything just feels a bit tighter. Like, you can feel it in your jaw and your hands that everything's just like go a little bit, and for me, when I then kind of go into a full panic attack, what I found was that my whole body would react. I would start to sweat. My heart rate was through the roof. I would lose the ability to kind of think clearly. And I think that's what scared me most, is that my body took control. And historically, I'd always been able to rationalize things. I'd always been able to make sense and like keep myself, my feet on the floor. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my, I can't, like, I don't know how to keep my feet on the floor. So like, even just making simple decisions was really challenging. That's what I found. I don't know whether have you ever faced, anxiety or had a panic attack?
I don't think I have, not from the way you describe it. I mean, we feel anxious about a certain event or, a certain period of life. Maybe something's coming up, you feel anxious about it, but I don't feel like I've had the generalized anxiety or the panic attacks. But boy, I know a lot of teenagers, a lot of kids who are going through this right now. In fact, I'm team teaching a class on navigating anxiety for teens in early October with a mental health nurse. And, just talking to these teens about, what do you do? How do you manage it? How do you manage all the feelings that you're having and the energy that you're going through? Because a lot of kids find that they're actually empathic and they're picking up on other people's anxiety. Is that something that you come across as well?
Absolutely. And yes, short answer is yes. Because it's interesting, that feeling, oh, sorry, my light, but that feeling when you meet someone and you're like, we seem to be going faster and faster. And like, why are we all just a little bit more jumped up? Or you meet someone who's really calm and you're just like, I can also breathe.
Exactly.
And I think that's also an interesting thing, is that we really have the power to influence a feeling, like a group of people, or how we turn up to something can really impact other people. And once you know that, it's almost like a responsibility.
Well, in fact, what does this title mean? Generation panic.
So for me, when I first wrote this book, I felt like I was part of Generation Panic, which to me is a group of people in their 20s and 30s who are professionals, living a very kind of hard and fast life, ambitious, driven, trying to race up the ladder, trying to show that they've got it all together. They're on social media, they're on holiday, they're on the gym, they're just tick, 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 just trying to maintain everything. And yet behind it, they might well be struggling, but quite keen not to let anyone know that there's any sort of problem.
Absolutely.
So for me, that's where it started. It was like, I see this time and time again. And, I'm definitely part of that. And I know that there's other people within that. But what's interesting is that I actually wrote the book about 5 years ago. And as mentioned, it's been published just a couple of months ago. But what's almost my short-sightedness is that this is actually everywhere. This is not about the generation has expanded drastically. Like you said, it's, I've got messages from teenagers who are having like serious challenges with anxiety and getting so much from the book. I got an email from like a 94-year-old lady the other day who had read the book. So,
Oh my.
So I think that was almost, if I go back and change one thing, I would have made the generation much larger but the book itself, the tools are transferable. It's not like, okay, if you're 28, you're therefore able to read chapter 1. It's not like that. All the tools are for everyone and anyone, and you can apply them to any part of your life. And so, I really hope that that's something that people take away from it.
Well, I find it interesting that, you said you wrote this book 5 years ago and then it was published this year. I feel like it's needed even more so now with COVID and all of the debates going around COVID. My goodness, it's science. It's not debatable. But there's a lot of debates going around about this. Political climate, et cetera, that anxiety seems to be even more present. So, very, very much needed right now. Do you find that any of the research or the tools have changed because of, say, COVID or, say, the lockdowns?
No. And that's the beauty. Well, I'm completely biased, but I think the book is timeless. Obviously I'm going to say that, but what the book aims to do is essentially make people feel so good that whatever comes their way, there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be, okay, sure, it might not be another COVID type thing. So it's been like an unbelievable, unprecedented 18 months. But it's still like how you manage yourself through really challenging times or like moments of uncertainty or things that you can't control. And ultimately, anxiety in like its most simplest definition is like a worry about the future, like not being able to control the future. And so the book is really there to like tool someone up to be able to handle that. So it doesn't matter what the challenge is or what the kind of like thing down the track is, because the person will feel good enough to meet it face on and be like, yeah, I'm ready for you. And if you knock me off center, if COVID makes me feel on the back foot or the next thing makes me feel on the back foot, I know how to get back to center. I know what I need to feel good, quite simply.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. So what surprised you when you were writing this book, researching the book?
Good question. What surprised me? Probably that there's just so many different things. I think when I was researching it, even just starting this kind of journey for me, I kept on coming up against the same advice. And what I realized is that there's so many different approaches that you can take, and we are all so different. Like, it's not my job to say, okay, Christy, for you need to do chapter 3, da, 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 and if you follow these 3 steps, you're going to be sparkly new and like feel awesome. Instead, we're all so different, and like what we might need in one moment, like in the face of COVID, or even having a challenging meeting, even in those 2 examples might be totally different. And so the beauty of this is that the power is with the reader. They can read through everything and decide what works for them. They can change it. They can revisit over time. It's like taste testing, like making a pizza and being like, "Ooh, I feel like pepperoni today, and tomorrow I'm going to have, I don't know, vegetarian." But the reader can decide. And I think the biggest learning is that we're all just so different. We're so different. And like, it might not make sense to the other person. You might say, "Oh, this chapter really resonated." I'll be like, "Really? Why do you need that? Like, that doesn't seem to fit." It's not it doesn't matter what I think. It's like what works for you. And yeah, I think that's probably been my biggest learning.
And so how would someone read this book? Say they've got anxiety, they've got panic attacks. How would they approach this book, and how would they pick it up and read it and work through it?
Again, it will be different for different people, and like they can do how they want. They can read it from back to front, up to down, side to side, whatever they want. I don't mind. But I would have thought like the 2 main ways that you would read it is either from start to finish and just work your way through it and see what resonates and go back and revisit parts that do work, or perhaps revisit parts that haven't resonated because it might at a different date read differently. Or I think if you're really struggling with panic and anxiety, if I rewind to where I was, I didn't have the capacity to sit and read a book. Like, are you kidding me? I didn't have like the attention span for anything. So if I take myself and where I was, I would have skimmed over the contents and had a look through, and then probably picked out maybe like one chapter that just jumped off the page, and then within that maybe pull out like one technique and just try that. And the book is written, it's all in super digestible bite-sized chunks. So I mean, you really can go in and say like, I'm just going to read these 4 sentences, take a deep breath, go and try and do it, and then come back and just slowly but surely, step by step.
And eventually you work your way through the book. What's your favorite part of the book?
It changes. So like often when I go back and reread it, or I might have something big or something that's making me feel wobbly, and I'll just like dip in and take something else, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that was a real good one. Like, I can't believe that I forgot that." Favorite part of the book. Do you know what? I'm gonna stick with probably the conclusion, and it's super short. It's like a page, but it's just like, it's my hope for the reader and the world, but everyone. It's so simple, but it's just the awareness. It's just the access to these kind of tools, which I didn't have. And so it's very hopeful that now that they have the tools, that they can just lead a happier, anxious-free life. And so maybe that I'll pick that one. It's the most hopeful and exciting. Like, you have everything you need now. It finishes actually with a quote from Dr. Seuss that says about the places you'll go.
Oh, yes.
And it completes with, "You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way." I just love that. Like, you've got everything now. Just like, you go climb your mountain.
Go do it. Go do it. Support for the Radiate Wellness Podcast is made possible in part by listeners like you. Would you like to support this podcast? Visit radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast for more information. And so out of this book, what are your top 3 tips for managing anxiety?
Top 3 tips. I mean, again, they change, but a couple of
right now.
Right now. Okay, so my number one go-to that's a complete fail-safe, and I absolutely love. I use it incredibly regularly and advise everyone I come across to do it, is breathing. And it sounds so obvious, but our breath is with us, unsurprisingly, everywhere. People don't need to know that you're doing it. So it's not like some, I don't know, weird thing that you need to be in a private space. And for me, when I feel anxious, my breathing, I think naturally is quite high, but in particular, when I'm feeling anxious, it's like right up here and super shallow. Yeah. And so, being able to really slow things down and try and push it, deep belly breathing is transformative, because it just sends, I mean, there's been tons of research. It sends all the right messages to the rest of your body that you're okay, you're safe. That's ultimately all it's about. Like, how do we feel like we're safe, we're not under attack? And breathing is the easiest, simplest way to do that. Exactly. And so I try and bring that in consciously to my day or before big things. So breathing, definitely breathing. What would be one of my other top tips? There's another one that I love, which sounds a bit silly, but I call it like the energy flick. And for me, when I'm feeling anxious, it's almost like this current of electricity starts like whizzing around my body. It gets faster and faster, and it's like my whole body's almost twitching. And the energy flick, it's just getting rid of that energy. It's like rubbing your hands down your arms, like flicking it off, imagining that like anxiety is dripping off your fingers, out your legs, like just taking off the excess, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love that one because it's really physical, and it's a good one. And then third one, today I'm going to pick, there's a chapter on cue cards. And for me, when I was feeling really anxious and panicky, I would find myself in a panic attack, and therefore like I would lose that rational thought. I was unable to think clearly. And one of the chapters is around brainstorming what you might need in that moment and creating cue cards so that you have them on you every time. You can carry them in your bag or pocket, whatever. But there's something that you can run through when you're feeling most anxious. There's even simple things like, you're going to be okay. This will pass. Like, remember to breathe, take a deep breath, like just reminders, so that in that moment when you lose the ability to think straight, you have something to ground you that you've written in a time when you know that you're going to be okay, that it's just a moment. So those are my top 3 for today. Talk to me tomorrow. I'll pick another 3.
I love it. You're on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What I love about breathing is that there's this neurological thing that happens in the body under stress, is the vagal nerve that runs from the head down to the gut and all the way through the body shuts down under stress. And deep breathing is the quickest, most sure way to get it going again, get us out of that stress response.
Absolutely. And I remember when I first heard about breathing, I was like, oh, really? Like, I don't know. Like, I breathe all the time. I'm sure I'm fine. Yeah, exactly. Like, no biggie. And once you understand, like you said, the science behind it and what actually happens and what's possible with breathing, and you then believe in the power of breathing, it's truly transformative. It really is. Like, if ever, and there's big, I'll be about to deliver a workshop to 50 people and be feeling like, oh, this is quite a big moment. And then I'll just do some deep breaths, recenter. And it's strongly advise everyone to get their breathing in check. for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. Well, how many times are you're sitting there, you're kind of stressed, etc. You're in a busy day, and then all of a sudden you realize you haven't breathed. It's like, been holding my breath,
Yeah. But
right?
that's it. We just sit there like on our laptops, like getting tighter and tighter and
Right?
like forgetting to breathe, forgetting to move. And we just like, well, that's what I found as well, particularly when I was having panic attacks. I would just like almost freeze into this, crazy spiral of like, and then I don't know what to do. And just relaxing everything, breathing deep, flicking out the energy. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just game changer.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, even we kind of do this naturally. If somebody's had a shock, one of the first things we say is, "Okay, no, just breathe, just
Yeah.
breathe."
Yeah. I do it with my 4-year-old daughter. I'm like, if
Right.
ever, obviously there's never a meltdown, but if there happened to be one, then it would be like, just take a deep breath. Like, let's calm things down. And then we can have a proper conversation about what's happened. If you're trying to deal with someone, if you take kids, if you're trying to deal with someone when they're not breathing and like flying off the handle, it's the
Hmm.
same with ourselves. We're no different to a 4-year-old. We need to slow ourselves down so we're able to think clearly. And then we can decide, like, okay, now I've taken a breath. Like, what do I need now? What tools can I apply to this? How can I feel like fully great?
I love that. I love that. Now, what section of the book do you think is the must read, the most important?
Um, Probably off what the back we've just said is maybe the breathing chapter. Um,
Yeah, I can
because
imagine.
for me, it really is foundational to access everything else that you need. So I think the other thing that I like about it is that it's so easy. It really is simple. Even if you're feeling very anxious, it's like very easy to get your head round, super, super accessible. So I'll probably start there. Or maybe the other chapter that I really love is there's one called You're Not Alone. And
Mm.
for me, when I was struggling, I really felt like I was the only one who was struggling. Like I was the only one who was up against it, and no one else would get what I was going through. And I was so embarrassed. And, there was just this whole concoction of emotions. And you really aren't alone. Like I talk about this day in, day out very freely. And it's amazing the responses that I get and the other people who, everyone's facing their things and we really aren't alone. So maybe that one too.
That's right. When we think that we are the most alone, there's always someone we can reach out to. I mean, there's people are always wanting to help.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Rogers said, if there's ever a, major tragedy or something like that, look for the helpers. There's always helpers. And that just knowing that you're not alone can truly, truly help. I would even say maybe that when someone's really in a panic attack, a period of heavy anxiety, whatever chapter they resonate with might be the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to like, who are we to determine what that is for someone?
Right.
They can decide.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they have 47 different chapters to choose from with like tons of techniques in the middle. So who knows? That's the exciting part. Like, go get them. Like, you do what you find what you want.
Well, and each each day, each situation, there maybe is something different that really, really resonates in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm.
wonderful. You've got so much in there.
Mm.
One thing that I really love about your book, Aggie, is the cute little drawings. You've got these
Yes,
illustrations throughout, these little egg people, and they are just the cutest. Can you talk about these little characters?
they are cute. Let me show you a photo. We Yes. So I felt like the book in some ways. Look, can you see that?
Oh, yes,
Oh,
adorable.
yeah.
Yes.
Um, So there's these little egg-like creatures that accompany the reader on the journey. And, anxiety can be quite a kind of dense and heavy topic. And I really wanted this book to be light and easy and fun and accessible. And so for me, it felt kind of important to break up the kind of text with something a bit, I don't know, just lighter and more. Yeah, exactly. And I worked with an amazing illustrator, a lady called Millie Baring, if anyone's ever looking for one, who created these two little characters, George and Polly, who accompany us on the journey.
Horrible.
And they're egg-like, their eggs are, I don't know, an interesting, maybe I've gone too far into the kind of metaphor or meaning of them, but they're fragile, and they can break and they can crack, but they can also be really strong. And I like that kind of juxtaposition that I think Generation Panic also embodies, that, ultimately everyone's pretty strong and, wanting to uphold and be that strength, but also there's such fragility to it. There's such, quieter moments and softer moments that both can be accepted. So yes, they're called George and Polly after Generation and Panic. George and Polly, who just,
oh my goodness, yeah. Oh, this so
they come on our journey with us. Thank you.
Well, it does just breaks up the text, makes it a little bit more accessible, lighthearted, fun. Again, when a topic seems to be a little heavy, bring it back to, it's life. Life is supposed to be fun.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you do workshops and you are a coach and you work with people. Can you tell a bit about the work that you do with clients and with groups?
Yeah, absolutely. So I coach individuals predominantly. So I'm now based over in Singapore. I have a business here called Westbourne Associates. And I essentially coach Generation Panic, like those awesome high achievers, the ones who are rising up through the ranks. They're usually pretty switched on, have done things right for a lot of their life, or they've been on the right track, but they might well have these moments of wobble. And really the work that I focus on is changing their mindset, like changing their habits, the things that they do on a daily basis, so that, like we were talking earlier, whatever comes down the track, they're confident or like resilient enough to be able to manage it. And yes, I work with individuals, corporates, ultimately like retaining the best talent, making sure their profits stay high. I mean, it's a win-win. If everyone's that little bit happier and feeling on the front foot, everyone wins. And yes, run workshops alongside that on a number of these kind of topics, like managing stress and those kind of things. And managing uncertainty.
Managing uncertainty. Right now, everything seems to be so uncertain. I'm glad we have somebody like you who's helping us deal with that and deal with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
How can we get in touch with you? How can we learn more about the book and about what you do, and maybe some of the workshops, and maybe how to work with you?
So just get in touch. My name's Agi Heale, Agiheale. There's not many of me out there in the world.
No, I can't imagine.
No. So you'll find me pretty fast. But yeah, get in touch. I'm on all the usual places like LinkedIn, Instagram. There's a website, generationpanic.com. But yeah, I would love to hear from you. It honestly, it gives me so much joy when I get a message from someone being like, oh, I've just read this chapter, or this has been, life-changing for me, or this has really impacted how I felt today. And so we'd love to hear from you. Please get in touch. Tell me which parts you love. It's always like an education in itself.
Yes, and you have, I see, agiheale.com, AGIHEALE.com, plus also mylifehouse.co, /Agi-Heale. Plus Generation Panic, the generationpanic.com. So many ways to get in touch with you, plus all the socials. So there's a lot of ways to find out more about your work. And then just pick up the book. The book is very approachable. It's very readable. It's, as Aggie said, we can turn to any section of the book at any time and just pick out exactly what you need. Is there anything else that you feel is important to mention that maybe we haven't talked about or haven't brought up?
No, just the only thing that comes to mind is wherever any of your listeners are, it's like, it's okay. There's things that can change that. I remember when I was having those panic attacks, I just thought, I don't know when this hell is going to end. Like, this is the hardest, most challenging, darkest time that I'd ever faced. Like, I even thinking back now, I'm not sure how I got through it, but you do. And that time then has become like the greatest source of light and happiness that I couldn't see at that time. But there are very, very easy, simple things to make life easier and better. So wherever you are, I hope that you get your copy of Generation Panic and feel like you do have the tools and tips to get out of it. Because that's all it is. It's just knowing what they are. It's not rocket science. It's just having access to them. So you now have access to them. Things can change.
Yeah. And what about just one more thing. What about seeking out professional help if needed?
Absolutely. Everyone does. Again, everyone needs to do what they need to do. If you've got another chapter of the book is the support network and working out who those people are that you can really rely on. And they can be any capacity. That can be friends, family, mentors, coaches, therapists, counselors, people you admire, Disney characters. It doesn't even have to be, but how can you pull on these resources? And part of that is really understanding what you need. So if you feel like you need support and accountability, then yes, find out. Absolutely. And no one needs to know. You do what you want to do. Like, go make whatever's going to make you feel great.
Absolutely. Well, again, the book is Generation Panic, Simple and Empowering Techniques to Combat Anxiety, and the author is Agi Heale, based in Singapore. Aggie, thank you so much for making time to sit and talk with me. I think this book is important. I think that this book is much needed, and I think it's very approachable and accessible.
Thank you. That's music to my ears. No, I'm thrilled. Thank you for having me here as well. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.